Yeah, good morning, everybody. Jimmy Wallace here with Zoom Q&A. We're looking at lesson number 7. So thank you all for joining. And yeah, lesson 7, we're going to be looking at a couple of items that needs to be completed. One is the local ecological survey, and the other is the cross-section or the site cross-section. So that is definitely a challenging part of the assignment, and I'll certainly give you my take on it and how to navigate through that easily. Maybe what we'll do is I will just share my screen, and we can, seeing as Ashley's the only one here, we'll make it some good one-on-one time here. Yeah, we'll review the assignments and then and take a look at whatever you want, Ashley. So why don't we do that? All right. Okay, let me just get my ducks in a row here. Right on. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward assignment in that we have the local ecological survey that we're getting 4 points for. And then the biggest, more important part of the exercise is the site cross section. And that is going to give us a side view of the project site. But we're going to get into that and the best way to go about putting one of those together. But first, let's take a look at the local ecological survey. And, it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if there's really going to be any questions generated out of that. I can look at the template file, but we basically want to take a snapshot of the succession of your project site and whether there are any, what stages of succession are present on your site. And that's that's a very interesting part of the site analysis to go through, is just to establish what the site looks like. And I reflect on some of the projects we've done, and there's been quite a collage of ecological succession. Sometimes it's very much an early succession where things have been disturbed. Some things you have pockets of mature forest. So knowing all of this really does help to plan what one can do around it easily. And the one thing we don't really dive into with the course here, because we're going to have some boundaries at some point, is we're looking at ecological succession, but that is directly tied into the soil succession. So we'll touch on that a little bit. Maybe what I'll do is just do that right now. There's some good diagrams out there, and let me see if I can find one that's going to, here we go. So this is an interesting spin on the assignment. Now, we're not asking you to include any of this, but having it in the back of your mind is a good idea. And that is, when we look at the soil succession, we're looking at basically two main groups of organisms. They're either bacterial or the fungal. And you can see when we get into the late succession, the fungal elements are quite dominant. And then when we're in that early stage of disturbance, the fungal organisms practically don't exist at all, and we have bacterial bacterial organisms, but even that is sort of a low on the totem pole, so to speak. So as the soil starts to build, both these numbers do. And often when we get into an agricultural situation, we try and balance try and get a balance within the soil so that you have both working for you. And again, if you allow certain tracts of land just to keep going along that succession path, eventually have a lot of fungal component within it, and that does somewhat constrain what will grow there. Let me see if there's anything else that I'd have to do a little bit of a search, but this is a good illustration. So again, often when we're growing or even starting a garden, we want to make sure we have both bacterial and fungal elements or organisms present. So that's not included here, and you don't have to worry about that, but it is an interesting side note because that is the reflection of what we're seeing above ground. And then we're looking at birds. So this, as an instructor, it's always interesting looking at these because it's amazing some of the birds that students focus on and the wide range of their habitat. Because we see it quite a bit up where we live in British Columbia here. And then we look at the food chain, which is a good exercise to go through, and then your SWOT analysis. So it's pretty straightforward. And I don't think, do you have any questions about that at all, Ashley? No, you're good with that? Okay. So again, there's some resources here for that survey. And again, a good description below. So let us go on to the site cross-section. So that's a little bit trickier. And, you know, I'm very lucky that the software that I use will do this for me. But if one didn't have it, you'd have to be able to do it manually, and that's what we're doing here. So we're basically taking a satellite view, and actually let's just switch our screen. We're going to look at Google Earth because that's one way we can do this. Even though Google Earth is not, you know, the most accurate. Let's just zoom in. We'll go any old place. Doesn't really matter. Sure, we'll go into Ladysmith here. So what we do here, we'll just make sure we're up and we're orientated north. And what we're going to do is draw a path. So let's say our project site was right here, and what if that was the case, actually, I would zoom in a bit more. Okay. So if we had our project site right here, and we wanted to take a look at a section of that property, you could go here, and maybe we'll go on the edge of it. And what you don't see is we have a little dialog box that's come up, and you just want to press OK on that. And then at the bottom of your screen, you're going to have what's shown as an untitled path. So you right click on that, and you're going to show elevation profile. So it's a really interesting mode that Google Earth can go in. And you can see that based on the line I've drawn, it has projected the elevation. So it's pretty flat. And what we can do here is we'd want to indicate on our base plan where this line has been placed. and have an A and a B on each end. It doesn't matter which end has A and which end has B. And then we are going to make sure that when we do our cross-section drawing, that we put A on one side and B on the other. And that's just so we know which side of this line we're viewing from. And so this is how we would get that elevation snapshot. So we'd want to sort of copy that. Let me go back to the where'd we go? There we are. All right. So if we go back to the template file under that section, the site cross-section portion, you can see here, I want a Google Earth view and clearly show the selected section. So we really want to see where that line is. And then on the next page, that's kind of odd. Let's see what their example is. Yeah. So right here, we're showing an A and a B. And the students decided to go from a high to a low point. So that represents this page. And here is section drawing here. And this is a good illustration of what we're hoping to do. So one of the things we want to make sure of is we're at a 1-to-1 ratio. So that means the the vertical and horizontal scales are the same. So when we draw a tree or a dwelling, it's proportionate to the length of the property. And sometimes on large parcels, if your section, let's say it was, 1,000 feet long, then, you would you would probably be looking at this thinking, wow, I can't do a 1-to-1 or everything that I draw is just going to be a little blip. So that is where I've seen the proportion change. And with this course, I wouldn't recommend you do that. I would try and stay with 1-to-1. So by doing so, you consciously limit the length of that section drawing or the section line. Okay. So if we had, excuse me, we've been getting lots of smoke lately, so it was a challenge breathing that in all day. Yeah, what we'd want to do if we went back to Google Earth and we had that profile for the land profile, we'd want to indicate that here. And that gives us a representation of the slope, and then we would be placing landscape elements as well into this that are scaled based on the height and the width that we have. So it is a bit tricky. I can show you, well, there's some good examples here. Of course, in an urban environment, it is easier in a lot of ways, and you get basically a higher resolution. So right here, you see where the A and the B line are, and this person had some topographic info. So you actually don't need to go on to Google Earth to get your grade established. You would just look at this and go, okay, at the beginning of the line, I was at a certain elevation. At the end, I'm at a certain elevation, and try and plot it all the way along here. So that's what this person has done. So they have this sort of beginning and end elevation. And let's see what they have, 6.6 feet. And wow, it's very flattish, not a lot of change in elevation. And these contours probably represent, there's probably, wow, 4 or 5 contours per foot, which, that's really, well, and that's maybe what you have to do in order to display a property that you think is quite flat, but everything does have a little slope to it. That's been my experience. Um, Anyhow, once that's established, it's just a question of placing these landscape elements in, and those might be fencing, it might be the structure itself. Now, the one thing I don't see here, okay, yeah, I see. So this student put the A and the B up top here. Quite often, that's something we'll do at the bottom, but it doesn't really matter where you have it as long as we can relate and we can say, oh, okay, we're on this side of that line looking in this direction. So it looks like we're looking east. And yeah, this is all very clear, and the heights are indicated along with the element itself. So that's kind of what we're looking for, an indication of height and getting a good feel of not only the lay of the land, but those elements that fall within that cut. So traditionally, it would be taking that cut and looking at elements that are behind it. Um, and in this case, this student has a legend where they have included plants behind the line and in front of the line. So I don't think I would normally recommend that. For me, I would be expecting to see everything at the line and behind. But if you felt this was a better way to go, yeah, please feel free in doing so. And they got pretty creative here and had the plant material in a different color. So everything forward was green and everything back was gray. So it's always interesting to see how people do these. And there's another example here. And this is a larger scale. So this is well done. Now, I must say, I prefer, this is just my personal preference, is having a some kind of idea of the length of this um, section line. And here we do have a scale. Sometimes we will, if we go back to this, sometimes people will include a grid, which you can do. Totally up to you how you want to do that. But yeah, these are a couple of good examples. So I can show you one of my examples, which is not, it's not exactly what we're asking you to do. But when we have done commercial designs in the past, this is sort of a typical, you know, the approving bodies want to see what things are going to look like from often from a section view. So this was a section drawing we did of a 5-acre industrial site. So this building and all this plant material, these are all proposed, and these were existing homes up on the slope here. And the section is actually taken down a road. goes right down what's called Christie Road. And luckily, our software will do this for us if we build a site model, if everything is in a three-dimensional mode, which we did for this. So that is, and you'll notice there's a scale here, but there's not the same information that we're asking for, and there's no labels at all. And, basically the people approving these proposed developments don't really require that. So we're trying to leave it as kind of clean as possible. And I can show you a little bit more here. This is actually the project. It was designed quite a few years ago. It never did go forward, but this is the project site right here. And we're showing a number of things I won't bore you with, but often when you're doing commercial work, they have requirements along the boundaries, amongst other things. Not showing it here, that we have to have so many trees per, can't remember how they define it. There's the number of trees based on the length of and here it was bordering a highway, so that complicated it a bit more. But these are all proposed elements. And that was the band, the setback, or this area that had to be vegetated in a certain manner. And there's a little 3D model that we did for that. I think that was one of the first 3D models we did, and that really, believe it or not, took a long time to get to this point and was fairly stressful doing it. But we had to place this flattened parking area and the building in there. And then some views. Here's from the highway, what that would look like. Various views, which have nothing to do with the assignment that you're currently doing. But if you ever got yourself into commercial design, you'd probably have to follow these sorts of guidelines. So, all right. So we don't do very much of that anymore. In fact, we haven't done that for a few years. And I am happy we're not, because they're rather boring. And yeah, the client's motivation is a little bit different than a homestead or a farm. So yeah, they're much more enjoyable to be involved with. Yeah, so I don't know if you have any questions, Ashley, or is that sort of straightforward, or do you want me to review anything about that?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Cool.
First one is, can you remind me again what software you use? Because your renderings are fascinating and I really like how it's laid out.
Yeah, I use and I'll start it up here and I can give you a quick tour of it. I use what's called Vectorworks Landmark, and that is a CAD software that we've been very lucky. We kind of chose it 27 years ago when it was called MiniCAD. It had a different name, and over the years, it's changed a lot. And we even tried other software during that time period, but we always came back to Vectorworks. It's quite expensive,
Mhm.
and it never used to be, uh, but it's changed. And they want you. I think they have primarily a subscription base now. We have our own kind of copy, and we can pay a fee to upgrade each year. But let me try and get a file open here that might be fun to play with. Okay, I'll try and get one that's because we don't always use the 3D mode for our work. Okay.
I just can't help but think what my site would look like in 3D, but I'm just guessing it would be lots of trees. It's just mostly trees.
Sorry, I didn't hear all that. I apologize.
Oh, no worries. I'm interested to see sometime what my site might look like, but I'm guessing it would just be trees.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I can show you, give you a little tour of Vectorworks. How's that? And I'm not
Yes.
advocating it as what you should use. It's just an option. And a lot of people do use it that are in a lot of landscape architects, which I'm not. I'm a designer. But basically, what it is it's a design software that kind of has two modes. It has this sort of sheet mode, and that's what we use to present the work. And then you have design layers, that's where we do all of the work itself. So this particular property we're working on right now, and we had a drone survey done of it. And then we built a site model, excuse me, so that one of the cool things we can do is put all the data from the drone photogrammetry data. So we get contour information, but we can also create a site model out of it. And, you can basically go around the site. It's very useful to be able to do that. The one thing that we haven't done, we haven't put any 3D buildings in here. This is actually the drone image that's been applied to the model. We can, if I, oh, I can't do it there. Okay. I'd have another setting here, but there's lots of value with this. It takes quite a while to learn. That's one thing that's, we'll say, a downside to it. It probably, if you're really focused on learning about it, you could get, within a couple months, get some stuff under your belt. But even, close to 30 years of using this, there's still things that I'm learning. I don't necessarily use every single feature that they offer here, but the one thing that is nice, and maybe I can find, maybe I'll open a drawing that's finished. Sorry, I'm just looking for, here we go, I'll get that one. Just gotta open and convert it. So you can have multiple drawings open. You have different layers. So this was a project we were involved with. There's so many settings, it's a bit mind-boggling, but we had a drone survey done there, and we ended up creating a site model, as you can see, based on that. So that's one thing that's cool. We can get a site model, and then it is an interactive model. We can apply texture to it. We've got the house footprint here. We can put the driveway in. I think what you're seeing there is existing trees that are being grayed out. It doesn't necessarily do plants really well, but it's very, very helpful feature. So we can basically take a look at any position in the landscape if we wanted to. Yeah, it's really helpful when we're doing retaining walls, knowing the elevation of the wall and how many steps we would need. Yeah, so this is more of a completed drawing. So if we looked at some of the sheets for that, so this is kind of our base plan, even though there's a whole bunch of labels there that shouldn't be. We did a water layer. So we were looking at, yeah, and you'll have to excuse these labels. They shouldn't be there. You have to, that's one nice thing about this software is you end up doing all your work and you have control over visibility of what you want to show. So in this case, we're showing the water layer, and there are other things going on that shouldn't be. Could actually get rid of those. So yeah, it was displaying some of our proposed planting. So, this is typical what we would, not totally typical. This has to be cleaned up for presentation, but basically, we look at water and then we would go through the access layer. And of course, it's got labels on it that we normally wouldn't want. But I can turn those off. There's all these data tags, and that's actually a pretty cool part of the software is these plant symbols have data associated with them. So when we go to produce a planting plan, which we'll have right here, they are counting and providing all the labeling for us. So it's pretty brilliant. As well, we can then provide ourselves with a plant list, and that's what we would send to a nursery for pricing. And we got name, quantity, and the size. So with the trees, these are what called 6 centimeter caliper. So that's the size of the stem, probably a foot or so above the ground. And these are number 2, number 5, number 3. Those are just pot sizes, right? So obviously the larger the number, the bigger the pot size. So with shrubs, we like to get, large as possible. And then here's all their herbaceous, which typically is in 1 gallons, and then some grasses here. And yeah, it's a really powerful software that way. It'll pump out all this graphical information for us. As long as you're starting off in the right, it can't really get into how it operates, but it's once you learn it, it is a really powerful tool. So we kind of have a palette of plants we typically use, and that's, what will drop into our drawings, and then these tags associate with them, right? We just kind of drag a tag onto a plant and it'll immediately tell us how many there are and what the names are based on the criteria that we have for our labels. So that's nice. I really like that. What other things are interesting about it? The one thing we do like about this more for the jobs we used to do is we could import AutoCAD drawings from other professionals. So when you do commercial work, you're sharing files with, the civil engineers and architects. And so we can easily import and export files. Another thing is with the drone data, if we were to go on to onto this, you can see at the top here, the X and Y axis, this is geo-referenced. So right in that corner, we took we have what's called a stake, and just to make sure that we're geo-referenced correctly. So that's kind of neat. You can just drop in anything that's referenced to that area and it's going to land in the correct spot. Yeah, so it's very useful, and we utilize this, and we also utilize what's called QGIS. So I can show you that, and that's free. Although it's tough to learn. Just to show you a little bit about Vectorworks. If you were interested in Vectorworks and you want to check it out a little bit more, you can. Let me just make sure I'm on the right. There we go. They have an excellent forum. So it's at Vectorworks, it's forum.vectorworks.net. And this is a great place to go to if you have a problem or you just want to learn about what kind of issues there might be. And you go under site design and you can, people post in here all the time. I've certainly used it a lot. So that's that's kind of one way of looking at some of the challenges people are having. And Landmark is just one segment of Vectorworks. It's used for architects. It's used in the entertainment industry. And those are the main ones. It's probably used more there than in landscape. So these modules are separate. So the other thing is they have, I can't get there from here. We have a service select agreement and don't know if it's going to let me sign in here or not. But this is where you have, your portal, you have what you own and some of the promotions. But the nice thing here is you have what's called the Vectorworks University. So this is where you can get a lot of tutorials. And they never used to have this when we first got into Vectorworks. it was really difficult. We'd have to buy books uh, to learn stuff. This is more of a, it's a really deep um, batch of tutorials that are within here, depending on what you want to try and learn. And, there's different landscapes are, of course, a little bit different, and your level of difficulty and what sort of things that you might be looking for. There's webinars, there's all kinds of stuff in here, and really highlights the power of some of the tools. So if you're serious about designing, it's definitely worth considering. So what I do recommend people, oh my gosh, what is it? Orfeo trace. One thing I recommend for people wanting to start out is to use this product, Morpheo Trace, with an iPad. So it's a pretty low cost software, providing you have an iPad and a pencil, and does some really nice work. And we have this. I don't really use it a lot. We have used it for some rough conceptual drawings, but I do prefer using Vectorworks. That's kind of what I know, and it allows us to not only design but present within the same software. The other thing that I have been toying with that I'm going to get into more is twin motion, so that we can work in Vectorworks and do what we want, and then we can link it up with this software and really start to add some pretty incredible three-dimensional renders, right? So you design in one and you kind of render in this. Very powerful. Needs a pretty strong computer to do all this. But you can do all sorts of work here in terms of solar analysis, and it increases the visualization quite a bit. And it's not that expensive. So I think Vectorworks in the US is probably around 3,000, somewhere around there. I'm not absolutely sure because now they've changed it to a subscription. So I'm not sure what the monthly is on or the yearly is. But Twinmotion, for those that have Vectorworks, is a little bit cheaper. You can get a free trial of both, of course. And I'm not absolutely certain. So they want 675 Canadian. So that's probably kind of 500 American. So it's not too bad. But it is pretty powerful. And if you look on YouTube, you can see some of the features that it has and some of the case studies, and it's pretty incredible what it can do. But when you start getting into this type of visualization, you are using multiple softwares, which of course adds to cost. Let me just show you QGIS, which is free, but not easy in terms of using. So we use QGIS when we want to take a LiDAR data, which is freely available to us, and we want to, say, generate contours. We can do a lot of different things with it. just see where our contours are here. Those are drone contours from another. There we go. So this is a contour map of not only the project site, but a block of land around it. And with our project boundary, we can turn on and off. So in in QGIS, it's all about layers. In Vectorworks, you have layers and classes. So again, it's controlling visibility. We can also put in a Google Earth map just so we have some reference, and that's pretty cool. We can also put in, what else did we do here? We had a drone image that I think we dropped in here. I'm not sure. But one nice thing I like about this is we can export, and this is all geo-referenced. We can export these layers and then drop them into Google Earth. So that's super helpful for visualization. I'll show you what we've done there. So we basically, if we wanted to take these contours and place them on Google Earth, we would just sort of right-click that layer and tell it to export, which we've done already. So I won't go through that. But it is a little bit tricky to learn, and it's not really that intuitive. But because the data is free, and if the site hasn't been adjusted since the if your site hasn't been altered since the satellite grabbed the image, then it's a great resource. And depending on the resolution, we can easily generate 1-foot contours, but there are a lot of steps you have to take to get to there. Let me just show you. Like here's a farm that we did in British Columbia here. And so we took this LiDAR imagery. All right, there we go. We took LiDAR imagery and we created these contours. And then we could throw it into Google Earth here, which was pretty cool. I think we had 1 meter and half-meter contours. We had, let me just try and turn this off. We have a slope analysis that QGIS did for us, and this is a legend for that. So you can see where we've got yellow and orange. We've got way more slope. Land capability map, which is somewhat similar because it's based on slope, but it really does tell you what you can get away with and do on those properties. We do have, I really like these maps here. Again, this was generated from QGIS, and it gives us more of an idea of relief on the property and the surrounding areas. So we kind of stitched a couple of maps together. This is the Fraser River, which is a very significant river in BC. And unfortunately for this site, they had a lot of erosion on this bank here. So, and this is erosion. Now, if I take this away, you probably won't see it. It's all wooded, but this was done way back in the 1800s during the gold rush. And this is what they would do. They would basically, they pumped water from a lake and blasted this water at pressure across the landscape here. And this is how they exposed the gold. Then the water would end up in the river. But what what an impact. Not nice at all. But to the day you can still see it's there. On this job, we could see that we were getting some water coming in from the west here. So it's very useful. I do love maps. So QGIS is very helpful in that regard. Gosh, I don't think you were. I apologize. I was not sharing what I should have been. There we go. So that is the we'll just take some of this information off. There we go. This is the relief map that I was talking about. And here's all the erosion from years and years and years ago that you wouldn't be able to see. And then we just turn on and off things that we want. Property line, there we go. And it's a great way to communicate your ideas with a client. Great thing to share. And we don't design on Google Earth, but it's a great tool. Got another little drawing underway here too, closer to home. So this is just a little 7-acre. See what it will show me. We've done a slope analysis here. So it's pretty flat other than some water running through the property. We did a this sort of relief map as well. So you can really get a good feel what's going on in the area around it and how much water does pass through the property. So yeah, that all fun stuff. So careful what you ask, Ashley. But so yeah, software, we use many. Vectorworks is the one we're most familiar with. QGIS I'm still learning about, but we know enough to get it to do what we want to do with it, and it can do so much more. Unfortunately, I'm taking farm design training with the Regrarian platform, and one of the bonuses of that is we have some video tutorials on QGIS, so I've been using that quite a bit when I get it because it is not intuitive at all.
But it's worth the effort.
It is. And I think you could probably find quite a few tutorials on YouTube with it. Um, it is worth it if you're trying to generate data or contours, and that's what we love. We want to be able to do that ourselves if we can. Because the advantage is when you look at LiDAR, even though it's from a satellite, we can tell it to remove all the vegetation and then look at the land itself. Whereas a drone survey, the photogrammetry, it can't differentiate between trees and soil, so that it's a good thing to use when you are trying to get contour information from a relatively open site. But as soon as you have trees in the mix, it's not going to do it for you. So there are LiDAR um, drones, and we don't have one. We contract that out, but that's something we may look at in the future. Is because it's really nice to have the high definition images as well. It's really helpful for us for visualization. So yeah, but are you hoping to sort of take what you learn here, Ashley, and start working with clients and doing some work for people design wise? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really interested. I'm just trying to gather as much information and decide if there's a specific specialty I'd like to focus on,
Hmm.
or if I would want to do the full, design. So I thought about getting my own drone and starting that kind of side thing, or I'm just not really sure exactly where the business would be too, because the economy's so crazy and technology is changing so much. I'm kind of
Yeah.
trying to understand what possible future could come from a class like this.
Yeah, and if I was you, just given what I've witnessed, if I was you, I would consider taking an approach where you're minimizing risk, financial risk, because just what you're saying, right? The economy is wobbling a little bit, and even with ourselves, we don't know what's going to happen with certain things, and landscape is one of those items that are that's going to fall off people's lists pretty quick, if things get really tight. So yeah, so using software, if you wanted to design and you wanted to have some digitized format, then starting with Morpheo Trace, I think, is a great first step, if you have an iPad. And if you don't, Vectorworks, of course, is a great thing to dive into, but it would be, a yearly subscription, and then you have to learn about it.
I
Excuse
bought
me,
the
and you.
Morpholio Trace for my iPad Pro with the pencil,
Mhm.
but I didn't really like it for creating the base map, so I haven't opened it since the base map.
I see.
But
Okay.
there were some limitations that I could get other things from, like Procreate instead. I
Right.
found Procreate for the base map to be a lot easier.
Oh, good. Excellent.
So, but I'm still interested about Morpholio Trace because I do need to design a home at some point. So I think that's where I'll use that software a lot more.
Right. Right. Yeah, and if you need to ever, like, we used to import PDFs and import, AutoCAD files, and as soon as you start to do things like that, a lot of these other softwares, well, those didn't exist in my early years. You had to either be in the CAD world or not. And I certainly know people, some landscape architects that just are hand drawn. That's what they do, is hand drawn. And that's great. Good for you. I couldn't. Um, but I can see it has its advantages. You're not relying on your computer or um, even electricity to generate your work. But yeah, I definitely got spoiled with Vectorworks, and it's served us well. It's still, you know, it's not cheap. Every year we have to pay out a little bit for it, but you know, it while we're while we're still active with our, sorry, I just gotta mute my phone here.
No, no worries.
There we go. Um, where was I? Yeah, it's a commitment, and a big commitment to time, but you do get, I'm sure if you were to go through a couple of designs and you realize you have to count all your plants and do your own spreadsheet for a plant list, and there's so much that it will just provide once you have it set up. Um, it's great. for repeated work. If it's just a one of, or, you're sort of trying to figure out what you want to do, it's probably, maybe not the best use of your time at the beginning. I don't know, but it's very personal. So you'd have to kind of explore what works best for you, you know. So do you have a kind of a type of space that you get drawn to, like urban residential or sort of larger rural, or, are you getting pulled in one direction, do you feel?
Not necessarily, but I really do appreciate the idea that climate change is coming for all of us. So I
Mm-hmm.
just thought that this kind of exciting project, because it's so personal to me, but it could also branch out and help other people nearby, especially, I guess, yeah, in my rural area. It'd be nice to be able to help people create some kind of a sustainable situation because of all the climate change that's coming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, there's no doubt that even if we didn't have a shifting climate, and you look at how most people manage their properties, you know, we can do a lot better so that we're using less water. And yeah, it's a good thing, even without that, right? Just to be more a better land steward. And
Yeah,
that's what we try and do with our property and with everybody that we get involved with, is just try and do the best for the land and the ecological footprint, and of course have that all match up with the client's desires, whether they want to try and um, grow food and raise animals or whatever it is, right? For some people, they just want a lovely garden, and getting some edibles out of it is great, good enough. So everybody's different. And, that's a whole other um, kettle of fish, so to speak, is the whole marketing and attracting the people that you want, and sort of sifting through inquiries, what's a good fit for you, what isn't, and unfortunately you can learn the hard way with that. We did early on get involved with people that aren't a good fit, but we wanted work, and big job, wow, looks great, but it takes a little while to figure all these things out. And doing it on a smaller scale is a good idea. We really kind of launched into large jobs right out of the gate, and very, very hard on me. Um, but it's no regret.
a lot of pressure.
Yeah, no regrets. Just if I was doing it all over again, maybe structure it slightly differently, but then, you know, that's the way it is. So yeah,
I had one more quick question. Is it
sure.
possible to get one of your professional designs as a like an example? Maybe if you could scale it down or something. But I know the project is mostly for learning. But if we could see a project that would actually be used in the real world, I think that would be helpful.
Sure, I can
In its entirety, possibly.
yeah, no, I can bring something up right now if you want.
I know we're after time. I have time. I'm not sure. I just want to respect your time.
Yeah, no, I can spend a couple minutes. And we could pick this up as well in our next Q&A, especially if we have just yourself attending, which very grateful for. Yeah, let me just see what I can find here. I may have to um assemble a couple of projects to show you, Ashley. Maybe, I'll make a note here because typically a project will do a lot of different PDFs for, and some of these, oh, there's one. Okay, well, I can show you this one. There we go. So, yeah, I should actually assemble. This is a part of a project. So next Q&A, we'll pick this up and continue. But when we do larger, like this was a couple acre project site, and when we do those, we typically will do a concept. So it's very much what everybody's doing in the class here. We're doing site analysis and creating ideas, and these are conceptual ideas. We're not really dialing into a super detailed drawing or what could be called construction details. And we have those for this project. So maybe we'll look at those next week or in 2 weeks. But what we typically do is we'll do a sector analysis. And I don't have that to show you here. I'd have to go hunt for that. But we'll do a sector map at the beginning and we put together a base plan, obviously. We don't print and present the base plan. We don't need to do that. But we do, our first layer that we do is water. So that's what this design sheet is. So it's showing the area of interest, which is not the whole property, and different roof surfaces, and a rough concept here for rainwater harvesting where we're taking it off. We're taking water off this outbuilding, one side of the outbuilding, and we're putting it into a little pump chamber and we're pushing that into storage here. So that was that idea. And then we have a whole bunch of data, month per month, how much the average annual rainfall is in millimeters, and potential collection, and then our usage. And then that tells us how much supplementation we might need through the year. These are all based on averages, but you need to start somewhere. Then a little graph showing that, and then a little bit of detail on usage, which gets a little bit spooky when you take an area and you add, say, an inch of water per week and how much over the month that requires. So in this situation, outdoor water usage is in and around 31,000 liters. So that's, probably 8,000 gallons a month. So we can't collect we can't store everything we need. We're still overflowing, redirecting about 55,000 liters. So even if we could store everything we needed, we wouldn't quite meet the needs for the site off of this one roof. We'd have to look elsewhere, and that could have been done by looking at these other roof surfaces. Client didn't want to do that. That's the water layer, and then we have our access layer, which for us is, movement through the landscape. It involved a permeable parking area and just a little patio surface, so wasn't a huge amount. We also had planters that we had considered, and clients didn't want that, so that got changed. And then we do a soil layer, and the soil layer is basically all the living material, right? So all the plants, all the planting areas, and just generally what's in those. So these symbols are really for, just to show generally what we're thinking about in terms of tree, shrub, and herbaceous components. Um, and then, of course, as you probably noticed, when we do each layer, we're graying out all the other layers. They're there. The water layer is still here, but we're focusing on the soil. And then once we get to the soil layer, we then combine all of them. And this is our initial concept. And that's what we present all of these layers as we work through the drawing. And then at the end, we'll provide this um, to the client for feedback. And then they have a couple of edits that we build into our work. So we can take a look at that next meeting, what they changed, and wasn't significant. It was more about the water collection. Yeah, wasn't too significant. Um, and then we use the final concept that they approve, and then we ask them if they wanted details. So then we detailed out the planting plan, and we didn't do a detail on the rainwater harvesting, but we did on the patio and in the in the permeable parking here. Did that. So we can look at that next time, and if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to show me some of those layers. And I just really love how your projects look, and it just feels like super professional stuff. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, well, thank you. And yeah, we enjoy we're always learning how to graphically present things as best we can. But yeah, the better you can visualize, and this is just a tool, right? I mean, this doesn't, you go to the site before we did any work, it still looks the same, but at least this gives our clients a little bit of assistance trying to see our ideas, right? So, oh, excuse me. All right. Well, I should go. I've got quite a few papers to mark, but if you're good with that, Ashley, we'll call it a day, and I'll make a note that for the next meeting, we'll spend a little bit of time looking at more detailed plan on this project, and we actually did part of the install for this. I guess it was last fall that we worked on that. No, it was the fall before. Yeah, we didn't finish everything here, but we did 99%. So we can take a look at some of that. Unfortunately, my father and my wife's father died within a month, and then that created all sorts of challenges working last year on projects. And
Yeah.
so we just kind of, you know, we haven't been on any installations this year. We're just kind of design only and getting other people to do the installs. But yeah, anyhow, I hope that that was enjoyable for you. And we will look forward to our next Q&A, and look forward to seeing your assignment when you get her
Yes.
done.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. You have a great week.
You too. Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.